I want to call to order the Amberley Village Council meeting of May 9, 2022. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardach.
Here.
Ben Hunt.
Here.
Tom Muething.
Here.
Keely Paul.
Here.
Bob Rosen.
Here.
Jay Shatz.
Here.
Scot Lahrmer.
Here.
Andy Keely.
Here.
Lieutenant Blum.
Here.
Rick Kay.
Here. And if everyone could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone to the meeting. First item on the agenda is our minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. Those minutes were included in everyone's package. Are there any comments on those minutes? Seeing none, we can consider the minutes approved. Next item on the agenda is our finance report for March 2022.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to summarize the March financials. Included in your packet was a memo along with the UAN report, which is the monthly summary that the Finance Department or the Finance Committee reviews each month. But in regards to the earnings tax, in the month of March, the village collected $263,000. That represents about 20% of what we have collected of what we had estimated this year. So our year-to-date amount is $699, so that represents the 20% of what we had estimated to collect in this year, which is $3.4 million. So we're sitting at that 20% level. That's just the first quarter of the year. We did receive some property tax. This was the first half balance on property tax, so in the amount of just a little under $115,000. The village asked for its property tax in advance, so we received the advance last month, and so in the month of March, we received the balance of that from the county auditor. Did want to mention the local government fund. Even though it's a small amount of money, we've collected about 27% of that particular revenue source. In total, the month of March had about $481,000 worth of revenue. So that brings us a year-to-date collection amount of 1.6, puts us at about the 28% level for collections. On the expenditure side, the month of March had expenditures about $459,000. Year-to-date, we're at $1.5 million of expenses, and that represents about 24% of our budget that has been expended thus far. We concluded the end of March with an unencumbered general fund balance of $5.4 million. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the manager? If not, we'll move to the next item. And this evening we have one citizen to speak, Ray Warren, who is also a former council member. Welcome, Ray.
Thanks so much. I'm used to being on the other side of the dais, so this is a little bit different for me. So my name is Ray Warren. I reside at 6715 West Farm Acres Drive. And first, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. About a year ago, this council passed the resolution 2021-4 dealing with respectful discourse at council and committee meetings. There's a section I'd like to recite here, actually 3 parts. 1, council should serve as a model of leadership and civility. 2, demonstrate honesty and integrity in every action and statement. And 3, council members are expected to demonstrate dignity, respect, kindness, consideration, and courtesy to all. At the last law committee meeting chaired by Mr. Bardach, according to several who were present, including council members, he said multiple times that I, Ray Warren, had a banner or sign on my property stating F blank CK Biden. There are 2 things wrong with this. Let me finish, please. There are 2 things wrong with this. First, it is a bold-faced lie. There's nothing in my life that would suggest this behavior toward any person. This is nothing short of defamation of character against a private citizen. As it was repeated multiple times, one council member thought it might be true. This reminded me of Hitler's assistant, Joseph Goebbels, who is believed to have said, "You say a lie once and people may or may not believe you. You repeat it and people will believe the lie." There is something even more egregious. All council members take an oath to obey the laws and ordinances of Amberley Village. This included the guidelines for respectful discourse that this council unanimously passed in its last term. it's clear that Mr. Bardach is in violation. What's worse, as chair of the Law Committee, we would assume one would obey the laws and ordinances of Amberley Village. With all due respect to this council, I ask you to reprimand and censure Mr. Bardach for his behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. I mean, as typical as you recall, I don't think you'll get a chance to comment, but are there any questions from council members of Mr. Warren? If not, you can take your seat.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Bardach, you can comment.
Mr. Warren, I do apologize for any offense you may have taken, but that is absolutely not what happened. And I'll be happy to talk to you privately about what was discussed. I don't want to do it at this meeting. But it is not what you represented that happened. Absolutely not. I would never do that. Tom was there. I think you recently spoke to Tom and he told you about what was said, and it was a joke. It was not intended to be anything personal, and it was not intended to be an attack at all.
It was said.
No, it wasn't. Certainly didn't say you had that in front of your house. I did not say that. I would never say
I've
that.
spoken to 2 council members that affirm what I just said.
Okay. I think there,
Apologize, I accept your apology.
okay, but I think there is a good lesson for all of us on this thing. I mean, Mr. Warren's right that we approved this guidelines for respectful disclosure or discourse. I think, you know, the problem we get into in any of these things, we can say things tongue in cheek, but when we say things and they also involve an individual's name, that's dangerous. And I think we should all be very careful in any of our discourse, be it at a council meeting, committee meeting, because my initial reaction was, well, a committee meeting with three committee members, the village manager, and our solicitor in this case, that's a little different than a council meeting. The more I've thought about that, is that's not the right response, is that it's unacceptable in any setting for us to say anything in a joking manner or anything where we say someone's name. So I think there's a strong lesson for all of us in this, and we all need to take that on board and be very careful. And again, it's not just, we are elected officials and we were elected by the residents, and I think we have to be held to a higher standard. And so be that in a committee meeting, a council meeting, or in other activities associated with the village, you know, we were all volunteers at One Stop Drop. Saying something, you know, at that is equally inappropriate. So I just think we need to all be very careful. And I thank Mr. Warren for bringing this up. I don't know that it was totally accurate what was said, but we all need to take that as our lesson and learn from it. Okay? Let's move on to the next item, which is committee reports. First committee report is from the Finance Committee, and as chair of the Finance Committee, I will give that report. At the last meeting, I presented the first reading of Ordinance 2022-2, which is an ordinance which formally approves that the Amberley Village will elect to use the standard allowance for lost revenue for the funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act and utilize those funds for the Village Accelerated Streets Program. As explained at the last meeting in the first reading, we received the first tranche of approximately 170 or 170,000 last year from the American Rescue Plan Act. And it was uncertain for a long time as to what those monies could be used for. Additional guidance was received this year, and it does provide that you can take the equivalent of the standard allowance that many people take on their tax return and simply say that, and you can do that up to $10 million, which is far in excess of what we are going to receive. We will get a second tranche of $170,000 later this year as soon as the state legislature takes action. They are due to take action, I think, over the next week to allow us to receive the second tranche, which hopefully we will receive in June. So we will receive $340,000 to $345,000 total. So we will simply take this standard allowance, which limits the amount of reporting that we need to do, et cetera. But we are in addition proposing to take the additional step, not only taking the standard allowance, but saying specifically it is going to be used for the accelerated street program, which involves bidding and so forth. So we are in strong compliance with the act. So I would first like to move that, I think this is a pretty straightforward thing that we're proposing to do. So I would first like to move that we waive the third reading of this particular ordinance and take this up for approval this evening. So I move that we waive the third reading on ordinance 2022-2.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we waive the third reading on ordinance 2022-2. Is there any discussion, any questions or comments with respect to that? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we waive the third reading on ordinance 2022-2. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardach. Yes. Ben Hunt.
Yes.
Tom Muething.
Yes.
Keely Paul. Yes. Bob Rosen.
Yes.
Jay Shatz.
Yes.
Okay, I would now like to move that we approve ordinance 2022-2, electing the use of the standard allowance and utilizing the funds for the village's accelerated streets program.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2022-2. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2022-2. Please call the roll.
Richard Bardach. Yes. Ben Hunt.
Yes.
Tom Muething.
Yes.
Keely Paul. Yes. Bob Rosen.
Yes.
Jay Shatz.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance is hereby approved, and it will go into effect 45 days from this evening. There's no reason to declare an emergency. I think the first reporting that the village will have to do for this is later this year, so we have plenty of time. Next item on the agenda is our Streets, Public Utilities, and Sewers Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce for Council's approval Resolution 2022-12. This resolution will authorize the city manager to enter into a contract for the 2022 Street Rehabilitation Program. The Street Rehabilitation Program was approved by Council, I believe, in 2021. It's an 8-year program to repave all the streets within the village, and the program this year is to repave Elbrook Avenue south of Section Road, Bluegrass Lane, and Meadow Ridge Lane. This includes some sewer work and some water line improvements. This project was put out for bid, and the village engineer reviewed those bids and has recommended that the bid be awarded to Rack and Bowler. Their winning bid was $458,254.08. This is a little bit higher than what the engineer's estimate was. The engineer's estimate for the project was $397,712.63. So I would move, this resolution was talked about at the Streets Committee meeting, and the Streets Committee recommended that council approve this, so I would make a motion that council approve Resolution 2022-12, authorizing the city manager, the village manager, to enter into a contract with Rack and Baller for the 2022 street program.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approved Resolution 2022-12, authorizing the village manager to enter into a contract for the 2022 street program. Are there any questions or comments? Not, it has been moved and seconded that we approved Resolution 2022-12. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that that resolution passes unanimously.
The second item taken up by the Streets Committee at its last meeting was a Resolution 2022-13, which proclaims the week of May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week. The purpose of this resolution is to promote public awareness and to show appreciation to the Amberley Village maintenance operations people. This is a national program that is recommended by the American Public Works Association to set aside 1 week each May in order to celebrate those services provided by the maintenance people throughout the country. And the theme for this year's event is Ready and Resilient. I think all council people are aware of the terrific job that our maintenance people do in keeping our streets clean and the snow, removing snow, and all the services they provide to the village. This resolution was taken up by the Streets Committee, and the Streets Committee recommended its approval. So I move that council adopt Resolution 2022-13, proclaiming May 15th May 15th to 21st of 2022 as National Public Works Week.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2022-13, proclaiming May 15 to 21 as National Public Works Week. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2022-13. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that that resolution passes unanimously.
Mayor Muething, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on to the Investment Committee, which I also chair. And the Investment Committee met a couple weeks ago, and normally the Investment Committee meets once a year. We normally meet in October of every year. When we met in October of 2021, it was at a time when there was great uncertainty as to what was going on in the financial markets and so forth. So we said at that point, we didn't want to wait a full year. We wanted to meet again in 5 to 6 months. So the committee met. We had a good meeting. And I think what was discussed was pointed out by Councilman Rosen, is that over time, our investment portfolio and the village's investment portfolio is basically made up of certificates of deposit. We're very restricted on, as a village or any kind of municipality, under law, what we're allowed to invest in. It is certificates of deposit that are fully insured. It is U.S. government bonds and those kind of things. So it is a very low risk investment portfolio. And what our policy for our investment portfolio is designed to do is even reduce that risk further by basically creating a ladder of investments that mature over a very consistent time frame. And currently we have invested around $7.5 million. I think it might be up to 8 now. If you think of that, and if you were planning on a 3-year horizon and it was $7.5 million, you would want maturities to be hitting 2.5 million every year, and you would just roll that over and so forth. Well, what has happened over time for various reasons is that our portfolio had gotten a little bit out of balance. And so one thing we've done is we did move from a 3-year horizon, where we were 5 to 10 years ago when we were concerned we might need the money in the near term, to more of a 5-year horizon. So if you take that 7.5 million portfolio and you're now planning on a 5-year horizon, you would want 1.5 million maturing every year. We got ourselves, because we were building the portfolio over some time, and then there was some periods where there weren't investments really available in the market. We found ourselves with in excess of 4 million that is due to mature in 2024. And so we effectively found, as Councilman Rosen pointed out, that we had gotten away from a good ladder portfolio. So what the investment committee basically said is we want to get back to that ladder portfolio. And so over the next year to 18 months, we're just going to make sure that we get back to a true ladder portfolio. I mean, we still have, again, very secure investments. Nothing has happened. All that's really happened is that we have too many maturities occurring in 1 year. And for instance, I think we have 1 million coming due next year. I think we had 1.25 million coming due this year. So again, we were slightly off and too much. And then we had in the years 25 and 26, rather than 1.5. I think one of the years we have 750,000, and another year we have 500,000 or something. So we want to get back to that consistent portfolio, and so that was what the committee approved and gave our investment advisor and the village manager. And this was not the fault of anyone. It was done for good reason, but we had just gotten away from the discipline of having that ladder portfolio. Any questions or comments? Councilman Rosen, do you agree with that characterization?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you. Okay, that completes the investment committee. We'll now move on to the police and fire committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 items to report on. We had a police and fire committee meeting on April 28th. And just wanted to first off report that the police fire open house was considered a tremendous success. I believe that the village manager may be speaking about this more as well later, but we're very excited with how well that went. The chief was very enthusiastic about the number of residents who came out to meet and greet and learn more from the police and fire personnel. Actually, Mayor Muething made a comment about how exciting it was to see how many relationships there already were at that meeting, at the first open house on that day. So again, it continues to speak very highly of the great police and fire forces that we have here in Amberley. The chief made a comment about wanting to try to make this a more common activity, and the committee is in full support of that idea. He also reported about the importance of our continued relationship on the heroin task force and some of our other networking experiences that connect the Amberley Village Police Department to the larger policing community in this Hamilton County area. Again, both in giving them more experience, but also in providing networking opportunities for our officers to make sure that they continue to be the best trained, the best supported officers in the Hamilton County area. The other thing I did want to comment on from that report was we just are so grateful and thankful for all of the residents who supported the ballot issue, supporting the police fire levy that was passed last week. Second item this evening, we did want to make a resolution. The committee, as part of our meeting, want to recognize Resolution 2022-14, recognizing National Law Enforcement Week here in Amberley Village. Clearly, Amberley Village Police Department serves a vital function in the community. Their services are unmatched. Emergency response, traffic enforcement, criminal enforcement, vehicle lockouts, and again, just reiterating the great sense of community that we can know our officers by name, that we can walk up and say hello, and we know who they are, and they know who we are. During Police Week, all Amberley Village police officers are going to be wearing black bands across their badges in memory of law enforcement officers who've given their lives in the line of duty. So this is a nationally recognized week that we in Amberley Village would like to also recognize. Residents are encouraged to show their support for law enforcement officers as well, who have died in the line of duty, and for those who are currently serving, by participating in this year's Light Ohio Blue during the same week, May 15th through May 21st. You can look up more information about that. Blue bulb on the exterior porch light, blue ribbons on mailboxes, wearing blue on May 15th, things like that. So the Police and Fire Committee have agreed and would like to move that Council approve Resolution 2022-14, proclaiming the week of May 11th through May 11th through 17th as National Law Enforcement Memorial Week.
Second the motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2022-14, claiming the week of May 11 to 17 as National Law Enforcement Memorial Week. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it's been moved and seconded that we approve Resolution 2022-14. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Being noted that that resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That concludes my report.
Okay, we'll now move on to the Law Committee.
The Law Committee recently met and reviewed regulations for trailers in the village. The committee is contemplating limiting the size of trailers parked on residential property. The committee continues to explore modifications of the village code to address these regulations. The Law Committee also reviewed potentially regulating short-term rentals in the village. Examples include Airbnbs and vacation stay, the vacation stay company Verbo, VRBO. Our current code may be utilized to address these rentals via noise and property destruction code sections. The village is monitoring pending legislation that is designed to create statewide uniformity on this issue. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Councilman Shatz?
On that issue of VRBO, Airbnb, what are other municipalities doing, or maybe that's a question for Scott, in terms of taxation?
From what I understand is there's a variety of different regulations, but I believe the state has taken the issue up, is going to create uniform regulations. I think that's what, the law director, Andrew, could explain that better, but that was my understanding.
There are varying approaches. City of Cincinnati takes a legalize it and tax it type approach, and you got a license and all that kind of stuff. Other municipalities in the area, I believe Evendale completely bans them. There is currently pending, it's in a committee right now, a bill in the Ohio House that would prohibit municipalities from completely banning them or placing limits on the number of days they could be used. Outside of that, you would still have the ability to do the taxation type setup that the city of Cincinnati and other major metropolitan areas use.
And so how would that process unfold here in Amberley in terms of reviewing possible taxation?
I think the consensus from the committee was to wait to see what the state was going to do. So we didn't spend a whole bunch of time turning our wheels and then realize we're going to have to change it again because the state's going to do a uniform rule on it. So I think we're just taking a wait and see approach, and we're going to use our current regulations for noise and property damage. So if people get out of control, we can kind of control it that way. But our fear is that if we spend a whole bunch of time creating regulations, then we're going to have to change it again 6 months to a year when the state comes down with the uniform guidelines for the whole state. So that's kind of the approach we took.
Okay, thank you.
And anything that would be considered would start off in the Law Committee. Eventually, if the Law Committee recommended something, it would come to council with that.
The Airbnbs that are encompassed in one of my businesses, I get income, it's direct income to me. I get tax statements and stuff from Airbnb. It goes into my business taxes. So that's, I imagine how we would draw taxes from it. You get tax forms.
Any other questions?
Do we have any idea what the number of units are in the village? Is it
My understanding is
is it
there-
prevalent or
there-
almost non-existent?
Two,
Two?
I believe.
Okay.
Scott can be a better answer, but I think that's the number we came up with.
Yeah, Councilmember Rosen, there are two that we know of, but there could be multiple ones that we do not know about. The only reason we know about two is one has been a complaint, and then the second one, we happened to stumble across that it was on one of the websites for short-term rentals. But there certainly could be others in the village that we would not be knowledgeable of because the village would not be notified in any way of a short-term rental like that.
Okay, any other? Thank you. We'll now move on to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. We mentioned relationships and that sense of community, and just to echo Councilmember Hunt's comment about the open house, we were quite pleased with the residents that turned out for the open house. That's a great opportunity to continue to build those relationships because community policing is very much on the forefront here in the village. And that sort of leads into my next item, which is the police levy. Thanks to our residents who overwhelmingly approved the police levy last week. Thanks also to those who helped get the word out about the police levy, certainly council members, certainly residents, volunteers throughout the village as well as employees. So we're quite pleased that the residents approved the police levy, helping us secure the funding for the police department for the next 5 years. I did want to bring to council's attention, on behalf of the village employees, we're quite honored that resident Shelley Hattenback has chosen to establish a scholarship in memory of Ed Hattenback, the council member that served us for 11 years. Shelley and her family have decided that a scholarship should be established in Ed's memory, and that would be available to employees and their dependents or family members who are seeking post-secondary education. So establishing a scholarship, I've not heard of this in my career where somebody has done this for the employees. So that is quite touching. The fund is being managed by the Jewish Foundation of Greater Dayton, and residents who would like to honor Ed's legacy are encouraged to contribute to the fund. But the anticipation is that employees will be applying for that by June 1st of this year, and an award will be made yet this fall to one of our employees or dependents or family members. So we want to just thank Shelley and Merrill, Ed's daughter, and son Brian Hattenback for this very generous act. And that, the only other item I wanted to mention is the bike safety event is coming up on May the 15th. That's being held at the JCC. That's a project that we co-sponsor with the JCC, work hand in hand with them. But I'd also just like to point out that we have at least one or two residents that are very instrumental in donating towards that particular event who help us pull that off. So just I'll bring that to your attention. It's from 9 until noon on the 15th at the JCC this Sunday. That concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the manager?
I have a comment. In the course of talking to residents about the levy, there was uniform support as was approved in the results, but a consistent theme, questions came up in terms of what the village is doing to look for additional revenue, the same issues that we talk about all the time, concern about the former Gibson site. I hear questions about why are we charging for cars at Amberley Green for parking there? And I think it would be great, and I'm not sure of the exact procedure, but if you could bring us just an overview next month of our policy in terms of the issues surrounding charging for parking at Amberley Green, given what we've just heard are some concerns from a resident about the ball fields. What is typical of a municipality in terms of charging a private entity or outside entity to rent ball fields? It would be nice to get some comparison of that. I think we have an obligation to our residents, given the tremendous show of support for the police, to continue to look for ways to generate additional revenue to help offset it, knowing not going to be substantial amounts of money, but we have an obligation to look. So it'd be great to have by our next meeting if possible.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll move on to the chief's report. Lieutenant Blum.
Thank you. I would also like to echo Councilman Hunt and Village Manager Scott Lahrmer, recognizing the open house and what a success that was, and how much we appreciate the support of the community, everyone that helped, everyone that showed up. It was just a really good event. It kind of goes hand in hand, similar to our ice cream social and other events that we've had in the past. Really pulls the community together to have those relationships between our employees, whether it's our officers, maintenance employees, or whoever it is, with the community. And I think that makes us different than other communities for sure, as far as that relationship that allows us to have that community-oriented policing, if you will. So certainly appreciate all that, and support on the levy was amazing. So thank you for all of that. With that said, also wanted to mention something about the Police Week. So our officer, who happened to be at the open house, Officer Nick Mercer, in his full dress uniform, he was up to the Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy on May 5th. It was the 34th memorial service that they actually conducted there, and he participated in that. Tomorrow there's a similar ceremony that will be held down in Fountain Square, and Officer Mercer will be participating in that, as well as our past Honor Guard representative, Sergeant Mike Koenig, is also going to attend, and other officers will attend, but they will be more hands-on participating in that event. So just wanted to recognize those two gentlemen for participating in that.
And by the way, that's at 11 a.m. tomorrow on Fountain Square. It's always a very nice event.
Yeah, so, and then as soon as it's done on Fountain Square, they'll kind of parade over to the Police Memorial, which is right across the street from District 1. So, I was going to mention the bike safety fair, but somebody's ahead of me on that. So, again, that's an outstanding event. We do have residents, great volunteer on that, and bikes and helmets and things. So that's an excellent resource for the community as well. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Lieutenant Blum? If not, we'll move on to the mayor's report. And I'm going to mention the police levy too. For me, from my perspective, when the police levy was approved by 83%, I try to take messages out of that. And the message to me was our residents very much value and approve of the great services that we get from the police. I think what it says with respect to council and so forth is, I think the message is that we are trusted as good stewards with our residents' money, but with that comes with the expectation that we continue to be good stewards with our residents' money, and I think that's something that we can never forget. Be that looking for additional revenue or always trying to be as diligent as possible with respect to expenditures. We talk a lot about how we are diligent, and I think we just need to make sure that we maintain that diligence with respect to our finances, so that in 5 more years or whatever, that we are still in a position where our residents trust us as good stewards with the money, because I think that's equally as important as the great work that the police do. I think that to me is something that probably more of a given in our residents' mind, for good reason. they don't probably trust us quite as much as they trust the police, and again, for good reason. So we just need to make sure that we maintain that. Second thing I wanted to mention, again, we were going to have a recognition this evening for Vice Mayor Wolf and Scott Wolf, who has been on the Planning Commission for at least 10 years. I think it's 12. But we're going to schedule that in the future. But with that, with their leaving and moving out of the village, we are going to have vacancies on council and the Planning Commission, and there will be information coming out on that. In the case of the council vacancy, it is for residents that live in District B, and when we send out the information, we will make sure residents understand the definition of District B, but we will be looking for people to put up their hand, just as the Vice Mayor and Scott Wolf did years ago, and we'll be looking for, in the case of the Planning Commission, that can be someone who lives anywhere in the village. Next item I have is the Environmental Stewardship Committee. The one-stop drop that we had on May 1st was very successful. I have not received preliminary information as far as the tonnage that was collected, but we had a great day for it, and I think we had a lot of volunteers, and I think the event was very successful. I went to the Tree City USA luncheon, and Amberley Village was recognized as a Tree City USA community for the 18th year. We are not at the top of the food chain as far as the number of years. The city of Cincinnati has been a Tree City USA for, I want to say 43 or 44 years, but we are one. I think the Tree City USA Southwest Ohio covers everywhere from Hamilton County up to a little bit north of Dayton. So there are 40 odd communities, including some that for the first time this year, a college campus was recognized. There's also some schools and so forth that are involved in Tree City USA recognition. But I think there's 40 communities that have, and I think we're probably the 6th or 7th longest serving. So in good position there. And then the last thing on the Environmental Stewardship Committee, the next meeting will be June 27th at 7 o'clock down in the community room. And that concludes my mayor's report. Are there any questions or comments? If not, we will move on to new business, and I know Councilman Shatz wants to present a resolution this evening.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note back in 2005, when my then partner, now husband, Stan, moved from Clifton to Amberley, we did so with a good deal of trepidation, going from Clifton to Amberley, which was way out in the middle of nowhere, as far as I was concerned, and concerned about how we would be, and if we would be, welcomed into our neighborhood. And we were about 5 minutes into unpacking, and our neighbor on Aracoma came through our backyard to deliver an exceptionally large plate of brownies, and our neighbor on the other side of Willowbrook, a few minutes later, delivered a cherry pie. And we have spent the last more than a decade trying to work off the calories from the sweetness and support of being welcomed. And obviously, we love Amberley. And I wish Natalie, our council member, Wolf, could be here, because I know this is a topic which means so much to her. And it's with a great deal of honor that I present the proclamation. Do I read it now? Is that the procedure?
Yeah.
Okay. So whereas the Village of Amberley is home to a diverse and inclusive community that safeguards the rights of all persons to be free from all forms of discrimination, Whereas individuals who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ+ include individuals from all faiths, all races, national origins, socioeconomic statuses, educational levels, and political beliefs. Whereas LGBTQ people who are residents of Amberley Village have made and continue to make vital contributions to our village, to the United States, and to the world in every respect. Whereas LGBTQ people everywhere have fought for equal treatment, dignity, and respect, and that the residents of Amberley Village are committed to promoting a mutual understanding and respect of each other. Whereas LGBTQ people have achieved significant milestones ensuring that future generations of LGBTQ people throughout the United States will enjoy a more equal and just society. Therefore, be it resolved by the Council of Amberley Village, State of Ohio, 7 members elected thereto concurring, that the Council of Amberley Village, Ohio hereby designates and proclaims June 22nd as Pride Month in Amberley Village, Ohio, that all citizens and civic organizations of Amberley Village are encouraged to learn about the discrimination and inequality that the LGBTQ community has experienced and continues to experience, and to celebrate our Amberley residents who are members of the LGBTQ community, that this resolution shall take effect and be enforced after the earliest provided date by law.
So moved, right? That,
Do I take a vote?
So
Or
moved.
You take some.
So
So moved.
okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
So it's been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2022-15 as read by Councilman Shatz. Are there any questions or comments? If not, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt Resolution 2022-15. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Be it noted that that resolution is approved unanimously.
Thank you to the members of council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a new business. I just wanted to talk about the Milk Creek Alliance, which just did its first pop-up delivery last weekend. So a lot of people are unaware, perhaps, that the Milk Creek, despite just being something that we need to be concerned about, water quality and pollution, that the Milk Creek is actually a river that flows through the west side of Cincinnati and in many ways parallel on 75. Sorry. And the Mill Creek Alliance does pop-up liveries. So they bring the canoes, and you can rent a canoe, and they actually provide, you start at point A, you canoe, and then they provide transportation back to your car. So this is something they do throughout the summer, and they have a name for it. They, if you participate in some of the events, not all of the events, they induct you into the Mill Creek Yacht Club. But this is a passion for Mary Stillpass, so if you have questions, you can definitely talk to Mary. And I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that Saturday, June 18th, there is a canoes and conversations that is specifically for elected officials. And so you can sign up for that by contacting the Mill Creek Alliance, which I have their information. Obviously, so does Mary Stillpass. But I just specifically wanted to talk it up. I've gone down and met with them, and it's actually sort of like a hidden gem. Traveling down the Mill Creek, you just would not believe the magic of this hidden gem within the city. Thank you.
And probably for people that saw the Mill Creek some 40, 50 years ago, it probably would even be more surprising. Any other questions or comments? Or any new business? If not, we can consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.